Welcome to another of our Wednesday yachting luncheons. It's always beautiful looking out our windows at the bay, and we aren't going to be racing there tonight. Darn it! Storm warning has caused the Wednesday night races to be canceled for the count of how many? How many people know? This is the only third time in over 50 years. Twice last year. What do you make of that? Twice last year, the first two times ever, and this is now the third time ever. Um, let's see. And I want to mention as you come in the yacht club, as you walk in the grill room right now, you get to see a new feature. As you may know, we introduced earlier in the year the K flag. That is to say, when new members come in, when the Commodore comes in, we put the Commodore's flag, Vice Commodore, flag officers, and so on. But new members get the K flag. Who remembers what the K means in nautical terms? I wish to communicate. So new members get to put this on their table. It's a fun thing that Member Engagement Committee has developed to help welcome new members. And one of our members of Wednesday Yachting Luncheon proposed a really good idea, which we implemented today. And that is to say, as you walk in the grill room, the pictures from new members from each main sheet are now posted in a poster to the right. As you see them, so you can see who they are, and they recognize that right now they get to have the K flag that month. And the person who proposed that idea was our own very brilliant Tom Eamon. Good on you, Tommy. Good going, mate. We are all as good as our teammates, and Tom does lots for the club, including coming up with that variation on the K flag idea and motif. Let's see a little bit about future speakers. Everybody who's paying attention to the Olympics knows that there's lots of controversy about whether or not the Finn class, that is to say, the Finn class, once the neighborhood of the greatest sailor in the world by all accounts, people have often regarded the Finn sailor as the single best sailor in the world. Well, that particular berth is maybe going to be out, okay, after being in the Olympics for, I think, 14 cycles. There's lots of discussion, and it's currently, if we maintain this course, it'll be out of the Olympics. So that means the competition to have that last Olympic berth of the Finn is all the greater. And one of the two folks who's doing real well to go after it is Luke Muller. He'll be here on June 12th. You may know the only American medal at the Rio Olympics was our own Caleb Payne, and the two of them are duking it out for this berth. So come by and listen on June 12th to what Luke's doing to get the berth. On June 5, Allison Langley will be here to give an incredibly great presentation on the restoration of a beautiful boat up in Maine, and I mean beautiful restoration. My 81-year-old boat is put to shame by this 94-year-old boat. They did a beautiful job. And then on May 29th, we're all looking with great anticipation at the upcoming America's Cup in New Zealand, where we're going to have a foiling monohull. That is to say, foiling and a monohull. An incredibly great adventure. The only guys that have a reasonable sized prototype that they're sailing of foiling monohulls are the New York Yacht Club. So we thought it'd be just appropriate to get the skipper and executive director of that challenge, the American Challenge from NYYC, to come by. So Terry Hutchinson himself, T. Hutch, will be here to give a presentation on the 29th. And if you really want to be on the inside, you want to come the night before, the 28th, because we're using the format of Monday Night Football, where we have crew-created dinners for a guest. Instead of watching the football game, we'll have our guest T. Hutch. So we're going to do that youngster crew and the flags, our cooking dinner for T. Hutch that night, the 28th, here in the grill room. On Barbara 22nd, Barbara Berrigan-Parala will be here to talk about saving the Delta, or as I say, saving the bay by saving the Delta. If we quit flushing water through this bay, it will hurt our bay. We don't really want that to happen at all. She'll be here next week to tell us all about that. A few things about our speaker today. Now, to keep the pace of 52 speakers a year, we rely upon the incredibly insightful input of very thoughtful folks who are constantly proposing topics to us and speakers. And today, the person who proposed the talk is in fact present. He's here. He's a great sailor, a really great guy himself. So I want to right off the bat acknowledge that we have this speaker only because of the thoughtful efforts of David James. Good on you, David. Thank you so much, mate. Wave. Come on, David. Wave. Thank you. Good on you. He was one of the people who would have been sailing tonight in a little exhibition of IODs out in front of the club, but for the race being canceled. A little bit about our speaker today. Imagine being 10 years old. You're in Southern California. You're sailing around in a little 28-foot sloop with your mom and dad, and all of a sudden you hit your head inside the boat, and you realize, wow, I've gotten so big now, I can hit my head in the cabin. uh, that's actually those kind of recollections that mark your life in the world. And that was when he realized, yeah, I am kind of getting bigger. I'm tall enough to hit my head on the inside of the cabin. A couple years later, on the same boat in the same area, he had another revelation as literally a whole pod of whales went under the boat and started playing all around the boat. At any one time, two or three of them out of the water at the same time. Shocked, terrified, not at all. No, he's a kid, so he loves it. Later on, he realizes, oh my God, they could have tipped over the boat, they could have hurt us, all these things. But when you're a 14-year-old, whales that close, you got to just love it, which he did. He basically kept playing on boats like this, but as you're going to see, he's quite an innovative person. So about a dozen years ago, he opened up a site called L36. And L36 was made for the L36 fleet that he and aforementioned David James play in. A great boat. I used to sail L36s when I was a teenager, early 20s. And they're really good boats. Anyway, his Lapworth 36. Lapworth 36. And so when you sail in the L36, it's got a great cabin. Things go pretty fast. And anyway, the site he made for the L36 started being viewed by people who didn't own L36s, to the point where now, if I have my numbers right, only 140,000 views a month later, he now has a site which is dominated by and serves a much greater community than that with which it was first developed. Please welcome Alan Edwards. Good on you, Alan. Come on up, mate.
Thank you, Ron. Oh, I should get here. Thank you, Ron, and thank you, David. David's one of the most gentlemanly. I can't even say the sentence right, but he's a true gentleman, and I enjoyed having him as a friend for many years. I'm going to talk about L-36 as a dash. It's not L36. It's in keeping with my tradition of picking the worst name ever for a website. You can't tell whether it's an L, a 1, or an I. It's terrible. Anyway, my story starts in 2000, just after the election, when Dick Cheney said there's going to be a recession. I was working at Intel at the time. I was running a group that was dealing with cable modems. And I talked to my marketing manager and I said, could you call our customers and see what's going on? And he said, reported back to me and says, well, they all say business is great. No problem. It's just that we have enough inventory, so we're not going to buy anything for the first quarter. And I was planning on retiring 2 years later, and I said, I don't want to work through what's coming. And I decided to spend more time with my family and pursue other interests. And I quit. And one of the other interests was photography. And so I have some photographs that I decided to sell, and I decided to build a website. And I also have boat pictures. There's taken from basically right here. And the website I had was originally called paletophoto.com. It became Alan Edwards Photography. This is the later version of the site, but the earlier version looked very much like l-36.com because I took, well, okay, what happened is I bought a book on PHP programming websites, and I programmed a website and built this little engine out of PHP. And when Chairman Bob Griffiths was ill and wanted to pass on all of the L36 information of all of the users and the contact, he gave that to me, and I built this site, which was basically like my photo site, and just put all this information on. And then I put a few other things on, like references that I wanted for myself so I could see them. And at one point, I decided that, hey, if I put Google ads on, maybe they'll make it easier to find me. Maybe the search results will go up. Turns out that's not true. But I didn't know that. And then one day I got a check in the mail for $100 from Google. I said, oh, my photography site. And I looked at, no, not the photography site. It was all from the L-36 site. You know, wow, that's really strange. What are people doing on that site? What are they looking for? And I said, well, you know, there's some need there that's being fulfilled. Maybe I can make it more popular, which I did. It was about 10 cents a day at the time. Now it's much higher. So,
40 cents?
oh, it's like 20 bucks. So how popular is the site? Here's a graphic. This kind of, you know, determining what the popularity of a site is, it's a very noisy variable, but it's more or less three categories. There's sites that are really popular, like Sailing Anarchy, Sailing World, and there's sites that are really not at all popular, like the YRA site locally. And then there's a group in the middle, and I put the St. Francis Yacht Club, I looked at the J-boats and the L-36 site. I looked this morning, and of the three, worldwide, the L-36 was the most popular of those three sites. So that kind of calibrates. It's kind of in the middle ground, but not, you know, considering there's 71 L-36s and how many J-boats are there, it's kind of amazing. So I'm not going to go through all of what's on the site, because I also looked this morning, there's 17,000 pages on the site that Google has searched. So I didn't write 17,000 pages. That's the beauty of PHP. It writes for you. But I'm going to give some mention on the things that are in bold here. The Articles tab, which are articles mainly I wrote often because it's something I'm interested in, sometimes because it's something other people are interested in and they talk to me. And I mentioned that there are 18 articles that I wrote on soft shackles. Some people call me this, oh, you're the soft shackle expert. Well, I don't know about that, but I've written a lot on soft shackles. I'll talk about that. First, go back, get this full screen. This is my boat, the little one. The big one is Seaward. And this is in the Master Mariners a couple years ago. And Papoose didn't do too well. And one of the things I'll be forever grateful to David for is that we were racing each other, and he came around, he abandoned the race and came back to see if I was okay. Seaward kept going. I won't comment more on that, but yeah. I'll be forever grateful for that. That was amazing. He also helped me with the protest. We won completely. No shared blame. So now I'm talking about some articles. I have a number of articles on climbing a mast solo, but without help, and I have kind of two methods here. One I found is really easy to get down, but a little complicated, so I don't recommend it. And one that was pretty easy to set up, but a little hard to get down. I'm working on a new article. You'll see it in a couple weeks if you look. It's easy to, you know, reasonably easy to set up. It's very easy to set up, easy to get up, really easy to get down. I mean, you go down in a few seconds. I was working with a friend on his boat. He was having trouble with his jib, and I needed to tie a bowline, and so I tied the bowline like that. And he said, "How'd you do that?" I said, "Well, you take the knot and you form a half hitch, and then you pull on the half hitch and straighten it out, and you go around here and through the loop." And the next time I saw him is, well, I tried fooling with that. I couldn't. How did you do that? How'd you? I couldn't. So I made a website for how to tie a bowline that way. I don't know how many people tie it that way. 1, 2, 3. You tie it faster than that? Well, I'm nervous. Yeah, you gotta see.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
Ah, I lost already. Too nervous. Let's do it again. Come on. Give me a second shot. Okay, ready?
Oh shoot, I missed it.
Oh, we're tied.
That's how you do it in Boy Scouts.
Is it? Well, that's my dad taught me that.
105 seconds. So that would not have won, Bobby.
You know, as a party trick once, I did it behind my back with one hand. Try that. I can't. I had to practice. I couldn't do that now, but I can do it behind my back. I mean, if I wasn't nervous, it would be much faster. I feel my hands shaking, but I don't know. I don't know how to do that with the rabbit. But another tab is a manuals tab, and one of the first things that I noticed when I was at 10 cents a day is that people were coming for a manual that I had put on the site for my carburetor. I have a Gray Marine engine, and it has a very old updraft carburetor. I said, well, what's going on? Well, it turns out that carburetor is used on antique tractors. And so there's a lot of people with antique tractors, and they were coming for the manuals. And manuals are general on the web. They're like $25. So I have like 900 of them for free. And a lot of people come to the site for that. There's a reference tab. And I'm going to show you 3 different things from the reference tab. The first one is dear to the site because it's one of the things that was on there when I discovered that people were interested, and they were interested in this. What size drill to use for a pilot hole? And the way this came about is I had to mount my winches because I kept ripping them off the boat, and I built a new pad which was bolted with big long 6-inch through bolts, and I had to drill into it. It's teak. So I looked up on the web. I found the pilot hole size. I drilled it. I got my number 14 screw in there, and I had to use a snap-on 3/8 drive flat screwdriver on an extension, and it was all I could do to sink that screw. I said, this can't be right. This can't be the right pilot hole size. And so I researched it and found that it is the right pilot hole size if you're trying to sink a 3/8 lag bolt into a 4x12 and you don't care that it splits out 6 inches on each side. But it's not the right pilot hole size if you care if it splits. And so I built this tab here. You can see it, and it lists the different screws and my recommendation and the original AWC recommendation. And I found that people went to it. And in fact, if you go on Google now and Google wood screw pilot hole size, the L-36 is the 4th hit. It was the 2nd hit when I first put it, when I first started looking at it. It was right below engineering handbook, which I thought was pretty amazing. And of those 4, me being the 4th, only the first one, which is the Bolt Depot, has the what I call correct sizes, which are the same sizes that I'm recommending. The other 2 give the smaller ones that'll split wood. Actually, the group that came up with the sizes I don't like, they say you don't really even have to use a pilot hole size. You can just sink the screw into the wood. It doesn't lose any strength. That's all they cared about was strength, not splitting. The other one, and I call it an Easter egg, I put this presentation together around Easter time. I thought, well, people, they never find this particular page, and I use it all the time. I think it's pretty cool. It lists different ropes, different types of rope, am steel, There's doesn't really show up on there. It's kind of off screen, the sizes, but there's steel wire. There's all what is it? Stay set, all different ropes, and it normally, if you just call up the page, it'll show you the strength, just like you'd get off their website. But if you enter things like the length of line you've got, the safety factor you want, what power you have on the winch, how much you can pull by, it'll tell you how much it's going to stretch. So for example, I found that I was replacing wire that would stretch an inch, and I wanted to use something that would stretch around an inch. And I was able to use that to go down the list and say, well, I need am steel of this particular size. And so in that, I call it an Easter egg because it's really hidden. And if you enter different things, it will calculate, the percent stretch of that particular, if you don't enter the power, you won't get inches, you'll get percent. The navigation, that's another Easter egg. This is the navigation tab, has all of these different things that I found and decided to post. And one of them is creating a GPX file. You know what a GPX file is? Everyone? Anyone? So a GPX file is a standard format that's used by GPSs. So if you had a GPX file, say you wanted a GPX file, let me back up. Say you wanted to use your GPS in a race and you wanted to know where all the marks were. So you would create a GPX file that has a name and location of the marks, and then you download it into your GPS with the wire that comes with it, or a USB cable. So I made this site. Turns out that the U.S. Coast Guard publishes 6 different books that list all of the lit buoys, lit marks, not just buoys, but lit marks in the United States. That includes Puerto Rico. The United States is, there's territories too, but more than Puerto Rico, Alaska, Hawaii, Guam, everything that's U.S. And I made a web program that basically stripped all that data out and made it readable. And then at one time, a user said your data is out of date. He says, I'll write you a program that can get the data and update it. And he wrote me a program in some language I don't know. And I run that every week. So I get this data is updated every week. A lot of the things on my site are updated, some every 15 minutes. So on this interface, you click with a mouse, you go back to you click on 2 spots anywhere in the US. And then you go to the next page and it lists all of the lit marks in that area. In this case, the lit marks within those 2 spots from my last slide. And I picked out the 6 that were important to my racing, and I checked them here. And then you go to the next page, and it has selected out just those. It gives you the opportunity to click and add more if you have some that aren't lit marks that you know where they are. You can then edit the name of them. You can look at where they are by clicking on the map thing. And at the bottom section, I don't know, I can't point over the slide because it's a split screen. But in that big blank spot, you can enter your race course, and then it will, all that then can then be downloaded into the GPS. What? Oh, the cursor works? Cursor, okay, yeah, and well, in this space, you could enter routes, and there's an example of a route. So you could then enter into your GPS, we're on Route 4, and then it'll be able to deal with that. So that's kind of a useful thing for racers. It is kind of an Easter egg. It's hidden in the site. The soft shackles is a tab of itself, and I show people how to make soft shackles. And I was told at one time by the guy that heads Caligo Marine that I've disrupted the market. that they don't sell them like they used to since I did. He was not happy with me. And I'm sure the people that used to sell manuals to marine people aren't happy with me, but sometimes it's good to have people not happy with you. You're helping other people. Um, Brian Toss, who's a famous rigger up in Port Townsend, I think, I used to teach one of my soft shackles, and now he teaches one that we collaborated on. But this is a kind of, there's many pages like this, that initially, the cursor works? Well, in the upper left-hand corner, there is a little calculator, and you'd say how large do you want the soft shackle to be, and you click a button, it tells you exactly how to measure off the line you have, and then there's a series of, I'm just showing 3 of them here, but the page goes on, and it shows you every step how to make it. And I do that with a number of them, and there's some animated things that show you, tying a button knot. One of the main sites, and the one I use the most, is the weather site. There's a number of weather. This is the weather tab, the weather index tab. There's a number of pages that are linked to this tab. And the main one is the I call it the L-36 weather tab, and it has weather and tide information, again, to any U.S. location. And I developed it in cooperation with the U.S. Coast Guard. What happened was I, at one time, had these Google gadgets. Anybody know what a Google gadget is? They're gone. You know what they are. There's 2. And it turned out they had a web page set up with all my Google gadgets on it, which like tide and weather. And Google gadgets were going away. And so they contacted me and said, could you make a web page that's weather? Because we don't like going to all these different sites. We want everything in one page. And so I worked with them, and go back to, oh dear, let's see. Oh, I'm not there yet. This is, if you see on the right, it's really small because I didn't really intend you to be able to read it, but just to notice that there's a lot, all of these things that are listed in text represent a section. I'm pointing again, okay. Represent a section on on that page. So this is all one page. So you can go on this page for whatever location you want, and you can get weather information. You can get the weather. The weatherman basically talking to other weathermen. So you can go on that and get the really detailed information. And there's all kinds of abbreviations you don't understand, but you highlight you put your mouse over those, and it reads them out to tell you what they are. But all of these things, in the tide, the satellite maps, the radar, they're all on this one page. So I'm going to talk about a couple. One is this, NOAA has something they call a SOAP server, which I have to read it on there. It's a simple object access protocol. Anyway, it's access to weather data, and you can get all kinds of things. You can get how much, whether it's going to rain, how much it's going to snow. And in my case, I got what the winds are, what the temperature was. And I made this little graph here that shows either every 4 hours or twice a day, there's an option. And then it gives you a graph over the course of a week of what the wind is going to be like. Now this turns out to be fairly hard to maintain because NOAA keeps having things break. And I keep reporting it, and they like that. And I guess at one time I was actually on a NOAA internal distribution list. That was kind of fun. They sent me an email saying, please respond, on this site to how we're doing. I clicked on it. It's an internal only. Couldn't. But they called me. They emailed me the other day. They had a new thing they were interested in, and they sent it to 3 people. I was one of them. I was really honored. But this is hard to maintain, and originally it would get so slow occasionally. It would sometimes take a minute to load, and that's where I would say, hey, your thing's stuck. And they said, well, it's fast for me. Well, it's not fast here. And I give them statistics. Of late, they were nice enough to tell me that they have 2 servers. One of them gets slow, so I'm able now to access, if I don't get a response back or get a dead response, I can access the other server. They've given that to just a couple people, so now it loads much more reliably. The other thing I kind of like is the airport report. It lists, you'll see any number of airports. It's the default, I think, is 40 miles, anything within, but you can lift, I like to occasionally put in 500 miles so I can see LA. But it lists any number of airports, and then it gives the 3-day history, so you can see, well, what's it been at 3 o'clock when I'm going to race? So you can look down the last 3 days, and you can pick what airport that is. This thing is completely programmable, and it can be edited. So at one point, you can't see this email, but this is from the Coast Guard, and they said, we like to have information on where our planes can land, but they can't land at every airport. So we look at a 200-mile radius, but we get 40 sites. We really only want 15. Could you change something? So I added the ability to enter the airports by name. For example, this is KSFO down here. So you can enter them by name, and it'll only show those airports in addition to the ones within the radius. So that's kind of what I've done for the Coast Guard, and they use it. There was an article in one of the magazines about some father and son that set off from the East Coast, and in a storm they decided to set sail around the world start in a gale, and they had to be rescued. And I went onto my site, and there they are. There's the Coast Guard. Clicked on it. Yep, that's the place. So if you go back to, well, here, it doesn't really show here, but you have the ability to enter 2 of these. It's not really easy to do, but you can have 2 different locations, so it'll show you the weather in 2 locations. And they wanted that because they wanted where they're taking off from and where they're going to rescue. Okay, so you got all these different sites I go to. Some is the military, some NOAA, some I create myself. The Tide site, I had a friend that used to work at Google. He built Google Plus, the database. That's gone, but anyway, he's a really smart guy, and I couldn't get the Tide program to work on this shared server. And he figured out how to do it, built a synthetic machine somewhere, and recompiled the code and said, try this, and it worked. So all you do is go on to this initial page, and you can enter a zip code, you can enter the city and name, you can enter an X-Tide location, like you could say Golden Gate Bridge, or you can just go on a map and click on the map, and that whole page is set up. And every time anybody does that, for a new location, it lists it on another page, and there are now 3,000 of those pages. In other words, 3,000 different locations have been indexed. And so you could click on one of those, but the truth is, the reason I list them all is that they even though the website, the weather page is one page that has parameters that you pass to it, every one of those 3,000 lists on that other page points to a different web page as far as Google is concerned. And so they'll index all 3,000 of those pages. So that's one of the ways I have 17,000 pages. I have 3,000 that are all just really one page. And that's really what I see is if there's a hurricane that's going to come ashore, my traffic doubles during the couple days around that thing, because people have searched on, I want to know what the weather and tide is at, not Moss Landing, but some site, usually back east, and it'll come up and people can find it. One of the things David is most interested in is the current maps site. So I was going to explain how I did that. Basically, here's a region, which is this region out here by the yacht club, that's called the city front. But there are 10 different regions that you can select. I had fewer regions initially, but then people say, hey, can you add whatever, North Bay? I added that. And basically, you enter a date and time, and I'm going to match it to a historical date and time that has the same characteristics of tide. In other words, that the current before, the peak after, the valley, where you are in the phase equals as close as possible to that one I have saved. And what I did is, you go back to, where is the cursor? Oh, I'm supposed to look here. So this is what somebody on SF Ports had a site. It's gone now, but you would enter a location and it would show you the current in that site. So this is what I would get from that website, which is probably right here, this little square. So there are about 50 of these squares in this map of this North Bay, the San Francisco Bay. And there's a similar thing in the South Bay for the South Bay map. And what I did was I saved once an hour, because it only changed once an hour, all 100 or wherever it is of these little maps every hour for several years. I pasted them together and I have 30,000 maps like that. And so that's the basis of where I get the current. Well, you know, if something changed, if they went and somebody decided to take out Angel Island or something, and my maps would be all wrong because they're based on history. But they're pretty good, you say. You use them? So I don't use them so much in the South Bay because it's really not much variation down there. But they use a program called Xtide. Anybody know what Xtide is? This hand always goes up. Why is that? Ron knows everything. And you know, I just look at what people want in terms of the time on Xtide, and then I look at my history and I rank all of the different maps that I have, and then I have a sort of an optimization algorithm that picks the best one. So I say first and last, the site started with the fleet, and the last tab on the site is the fleet. So here is the fleet, and here's my boat. I won't show David's boat because it's at the very end of the list. You're the last one, right? So I'm the fifth one. And we've raced against each other, and we've both won a lot, and we both come in second a lot. I don't know if you've ever come in third, but I used to do that before I got my sails and fixed things up. I like to think my boat's faster now. After I was hit, I got an all new aluminum rig, and I've never told you this, David, but one of my criteria was that my mast had to be lighter than yours. and the fellow that built it was called Buzz Behringer, and we went through quite a bit of discussion he wanted to make mine heavier than yours. And I said, no, I can't do that. It has to be lighter. And so he said, well, when you put 6,000 pounds on your backstay, it's going to put a really big load on the mast. And I say, Buzz, if I put 6,000 pounds on my backstay, my mast is going to go through the bottom of my boat. He said, yeah, but the spreaders are only 2 feet long. I said, my spreaders are 4 feet long. So he made, you know, we worked out, okay, make the spreaders closer to 4 feet. He made them 3 and something. I'm only going to put, let's say I put 2,000 pounds on the forestay maximum. I know you put way more than that, but that's the maximum. And so we got a mast that's lighter than his, and the boat does pretty well. I will mention my YouTube channel. I say, in keeping with the tradition of using the worst possible names for things, my channel is called Alan E222, which was my login name at one time. The most viewed video is 146,000 views, and it's called 9 Knots for Sailors. It's the most viewed sailors knots video on YouTube. My mast climb, I mentioned mast climbing earlier, that I have articles on it. Those videos run about 75,000 views, which is pretty good. I didn't get to mention it here, but I have 1,700 subscribers, and I get new people every day, which amazes me. I said, why? A lot of the videos I post are of me racing, so I just posted one a week ago. We did we screwed up so bad last night that I probably won't. I may not post one. We came in second though, but without my what's the guy that's at the front of the boat? Bowman. Um, Without my bowman there, because he was sick, I tried to do everything, and I can tell you afterwards how many ways you can mess up rigging a spinnaker. So the views run from 35, which is a low end. I get maybe 60 people that watch my races that are like 3-minute videos. I don't understand why people do it, but I'm pleased to help people out. The last thing I want to talk about was the work that I did for the U.S. Olympic Committee. This photo here is off of Caleb Payne's website, and it shows the two pieces of gear that make up what we built. One is a processor, which has a little antenna. This little tiny bump is an antenna, and the other is a dual display, so that you can see it no matter which side of the boat you're hiked up on. So that's all I'm going to show you about what it looks like. And this is the first time I've talked about it publicly because we wanted to keep it kind of secret to the Olympics, but we're getting close enough. Bill Chrysler recruited me in 2013 to build something for Caleb Payne. And it's turned out to be something that the Olympics picked up, and they've bought 3 of them to do in their testing. And it's for, at the time when Bill talked to me, I thought it was pretty simple. I had this app that I use for racing that runs on an Android phone, and then I had this device that interfaces to instruments and interfaces to my phone or tablet. And I thought, well, sure, I can just simply modify that. And then he connected me with Stan Honey, and he laid out the requirements. I said, well, Bill, what you want to do isn't going to work. So Stan connected me with Graham Wynn, who did some testing for the Volvo Ocean Race. And we came up with something that's similar to what Graham used. And what is it? Is it's 2-boat testing. So you put one of these systems, a processor and a display in each boat, and it tells you which one is, what the VMG difference is between the boats. And the accuracy is about 0.02 knots, which that's pretty good. The trick in building this was to get the radio communication to work, because the initial one we built for Caleb had a 5-foot, it went up his mast 5 foot, and you put the antenna up there, and everybody said you can't possibly get these radios to talk to each other between the 2 boats unless you get them 5 feet off the water. Well, we tested them, the latest version, with the units touching the water, 100 meters across the lake, no loss in communication. And that's the secret. And then Bill said, well, I don't want the wire between the processor and the display. And at that time, I was working on my unit that I used for my own racing, and there were a few people using it. One was in Denmark, or one was Danish, where's that? Anyway, one was Danish, and one was in Australia. And the guy from Australia said, hey, will you put in some code because I want to do a wireless display? Yes, I will. How do you do that? Anyway, and so he helped me, and I did that. Like I said, the neat thing is about this is that if you talk to people about what I've done, they'll say, that won't work. You can't do that. And until you go through the math of, how do I do a VMG if I'm not measuring the wind direction? So I can do that, and the U.S. Sailing has its PhD guy that, we talked back and forth. I said, this is how I do it. And he says, oh, yeah, that does work. And people who try it know it works. So that's it. Look, 1:15. Right on. Take the mic. Where do I sit? I guess I should have figured that out since there's the mic there.
Welcome again to the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon. Our speaker today is Alan Edwards, a web developer who created the encoder, who created the L-36 website. And it's of such use that he gets pretty good metrics on his home created website. So tell us a little bit about your equipment stuff. First of all, thanks to the community, or thank you on behalf of everybody in the community who, including myself, has used your site. It's great, Alan. Thank you. What's your equipment at home? What do you have for a laptop? What do you have for bandwidth? What kind of speeds are you uploading and downloading?
Well, this is all pretty low tech. Like I said, I use PHP. I do it on a editor called Edit Plus, which is a very simple editor. And I upload it now to oneandone.com. And they host me for $15 a month. Can't believe it. I got mad at them once, and I called another host and said, "Hey, can I host it with you?" And they said, "Well, how much traffic do you get?" And I told them, and they said, "Oh, no way, you can't come here." And but they give me unlimited bandwidth and unlimited storage and unlimited file size.
So
it's
when
on
you
a shared server.
When you chose PHP, did you consider JavaScript at any point, or you went straight to PHP, and for what? What reason?
I did not look at JavaScript. I'm basically with a C, straight C, not C++, but C was my
native
home comfort zone. And PHP is pretty close. JavaScript is slower. I did end up learning it because I had my app that I use for my own racing is in Java. And it's just a Dell computer at home.
So how many years has this site been rolling now?
It's been so long, and I'm getting so old I can't remember.
What?
But I left Intel in 2001, and so it was sometime shortly after that, I think.
How many hours a week do you think you apply to the site?
None. None. It varies. When there's a problem, it takes maybe a couple hours to fix. Something wrong with NOAA data. If I'm writing a new article, it might take me most of a couple days to code it. I'm doing these YouTube videos, and this latest one for climbing the mast, I've spent about 6 hours filming on my boat climbing the mast. I've climbed, I don't know, 10 times filming, and those take a while.
Do you have any people that you farm work out to?
No.
All yourself?
Yep.
What's the growth rate annually of users on the site or viewers to the site?
Well, that's a good question. I think that I'll answer this way. A couple of years ago, I got the revenue I got was X, and the number of users I got was Y. And now the revenue is just slightly less than X, and the number of users is slightly more than 2 times Y. So it's a battle. I characterize the revenue as not being a lot, but it's enough to buy new sales every year.
Is the site keyword searchable? Can you type in?
What?
Can you type in just native word and will it search, or is it keyword searchable?
I think probably yes. Mm-hmm. If you type in, one of the things I learned fairly early on was that if you want Google to find stuff, what you need to do is make pages that provide what people want. And I discovered that one way I discovered that is I think in my racing tab I have some articles that were written by a sailmaker. I won't say who, but and then I looked on Google. When you search for those articles, my site came up before the sailmaker. And the reason was I had a page devoted to that article, and they didn't. That was my judgment.
So, Julia, from the web, we have some comment from Facebook.
We do. Pedro, foiling sailor from Australia, says, Alan, what or who gives you the inspiration to think the way you do?
Good.
I don't know quite how to answer that. That sounds like a born with question.
But, yeah, how did you get started?
How did I get?
I hear the engineer in you coming.
Well, when I was a little Cub Scout, my dad gave me this little radio kit where you plug things together and you can make radios and stuff. And I don't know if that's why I became an electrical engineer, but I went to Stanford, got a master's in electrical engineering, and then I went to work for Hewlett Packard, and I invented things for them. I worked in R&D, and we invented microwave test equipment. And then I left them and went to a little place called Stanford Telecom. And the one thing that I have a patent on that people might have heard of is a cable modem. And we have one of the fundamental patents on cable modems. And then Intel decided that the group I was running was something they wanted, and they bought the group. And that's why I ended up at Intel, which I hated. And talking about bureaucratic, I had a woman working for me that used to work at the GSA. You know what the GSA is? She said Intel was way more bureaucratic.
What years?
Well, I was there just maybe 3 years, and I left in early 2001.
What's the most popular tab on the site?
Most of the traffic comes there through Google, and instead of through tabs. And the really popular things are the manuals and the weather. And then next is soft shackles. If you go on the different, like how popular is my website, Amazon has one, I forgot the name of it, but they'll list what the popular pages are, and they always change. I don't know how they get them, but those are probably the most popular things.
Question from Gordon Danielson. Gordon.
I found your website there with the tide tables to be fascinating, because a week ago I was invited to go out and race on the ICs, and so I was going through a fire drill to try to bring back, after over 20 years, tide tables and things like that. So I did a search. I thought how easy it'll be to search current charts for San Francisco Bay. And I found everything but what I was looking for, and nothing ever came close to this. And I finally found something that was kind of an approximation. And then it turned out the current at the gate was going to be lower than what one of the guys on the boat said it was actually supposed to be. So it would be what I have a talent for not finding things on the web. So you could probably use people like me to come up with a way to be seen, because what you have there on your site is really fantastic. That's something I'd.
So you're saying that it's hard to find it?
I didn't.
On NOAA.
I didn't come close.
Huh.
And the NOAA stuff, government stuff, and all that. It was like tide levels as opposed to tide currents on the bay. So yeah, I found it was not possible to find your site.
I was one of the things I was going to say, if I could talk a bit about, not so much David, but about his boat. What happened in terms of the current? Why am I inspired to do the current charts? What happened was I was racing Lita once. David was not on board, and came around Blackhauler, and I was so far ahead. Just I was over here when they rounded, and I had looked at the current charts. The book, the tide book. Everybody has a tide book, and it said there's less current out far than in towards shore. And Lita went right across the shore, and by Blossom Rock, they were so far ahead of us we didn't have a chance. After the race, I said, I should have covered. And I'll never forget I don't know who you had, the fellow with the Express. There's them. He said, it's hard to cover when you're so far ahead.
Repeat the name.
Bart Schneider. Express 37 guy.
That got me interested in currents. I went to the Bay model, and we went to Cammy's talk, and I took my crew, and then I found this site that had built, and that's how it all. And a few years later, I had enough data to build the site.
So, are the data points on your site based upon the best consensus and averaging of the inputs that you're able to find? Is that what you're using?
You mean the current?
Yeah, the current sites. I'm sorry, I wasn't.
So I
specific.
look at a couple of different parameters. One is where you are in the cycle, and how much the minimum was, how much the maximum was, what's the cycle length, and then I score those in importance, and I rank all the ones I have against that criteria and pick the one that comes at the top of a sort.
So essentially, you're getting the closest consensus of the data points that you're getting.
Yeah.
And what's the source of the data points?
X-tide.
X-tide. Okay. And those of us who've done some study in this field know this area know that the amount of water coming in and out of the gate, the net delta outflow, as we could call it, going out the gate, has lots to do with how much rain there's been 3 weeks before, or the dams at Chips, up at Chips Island,
Right.
and things like that. Have you any way yet to improve your extrapolation with those considerations?
Well, what I'll say is this: the X-tide and the data I use don't consider that. The explanation with the guy that wrote the simulation, the little tiny maps, is that he's looking deeper down, and that the amount of water comes in and out of the bay is dominant and has very little to do with what's coming down the rivers. And I disputed that with him, but he was convinced.
Well, you were right. Those of us who race know that there's way bigger ebbs after giant,
Right.
rain.
I've experienced that myself.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Edwards, it's really impressive what you've done. I wonder if you're aware that approximately a couple months ago, one of our sailor friends from Monterey Bay fell off the boat in the first race of the year, and they got him up to the boat, but they couldn't get him back onto the boat. I'm just wondering if you have any more resources on that kind of a situation. Thank you.
Well, it's a good thing to think about ahead of time. And one thing to do is to put a block and tackle on the boom and swing the boom out over the person and haul him up. I have a block and tackle below on my boat, and at one time I had a shackle to remove the traveler block, but it didn't hold up; it bent, and so I quit doing that.
What length videos do you find works best for you?
The mass climbing ones are, 14, 15 minutes. The ones I do for my own races are about 3 minutes. I can't really say. I don't have a lot of videos that are as successful as the mass climbing one. I can't remember the 9 knots. It goes pretty quick. I think it might be 6 minutes. So that's the best one.
Have you heard, what a statometer is? Recognize what those are?
A what?
A statometer?
No.
Because what you're doing with the two-boat testing, I want to ask about, but by way of background, in '83 in the America's Cup, with the Defender Courageous Syndicate, we would measure in two-boat testing using very primitive trigonometry tools to see which boat was pointing higher or going faster. Now, in your two-boat testing device that you're using, are you displaying for any of the individual sailors or at a coaching boat? Where's the display?
The individual sailors get a display. The coaching boat can get a display if he wants to. The coach has a website, basically, and he gets much more information. The sailor only gets the VMG difference of the test boat.
And is the display that the sailor gets on the inside of glasses, or is it on where is it?
No, it's on the
a little panel you have.
Yeah, it's a dual panel, so he can see it whether he's hiking port or starboard.
So if he's on the fin, he can see it.
Yes.
And so when he starts racing, that's not permitted.
No,
but this
that's
is for
correct.
practicing, training, and
picking a sail, picking a rudder.
Testing, two-boat testing.
Testing.
Yeah. Well, I want to really applaud the incredible service you provided to our sailing community. And of course, the metrics of your site speak for themselves. But as one who, like another speaker I've searched around to find good data points. And as my buddy David James said earlier, Ron, check this out. This guy doesn't have anything like the staff of NOAA, but his information is far more current. And citizen sailors have done a lot to improve the game, And we just want to say thanks so much. It's great to have you here. And, with that, we want to say thanks to our speaker at the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon today, Alan Edwards, the developer of the L-36.com website. And with that, the luncheon is adjourned.
Thank you.
Happy as heck.